Welcome to the lesson on calculating intersection points of two equations. Let's start by inputting two linear equations into the grapher. So we're going to first click on the y equals. All the graphing buttons are at the top of the screen. So let's click y equals. Then we're going to type in 2 and then the x. The x button is the button that's in the second column right beside the alpha button. It says x, t, and theta. Till you get to the button that we want to plug in. Numerator, denominator, actually it's D. So press enter to choose it. And once you do that, you get a place to plug in a fraction. I'm going to type in a 5 for the numerator. I can scroll to the right or I can scroll down. If I scroll to the right, it'll automatically take me to the denominator. Welcome to the lesson on plotting the graph of a function within an arbitrary viewing window. Let's start with h of x equals 0.002x squared plus 0.005x minus 0.029. You need to first notice that this is a quadratic function so that you can get an idea of what the graph should look like. Because it's a quadratic function, it's going to look like a parabola. It's going to open up because the coefficient of x squared is positive. So let's type it into our grapher. So to access the graphing buttons, you notice that all the graphing keys are up here in white on the squared button to get to square root, and then I need to type in an x. Now you have to tell the calculator when you want it to stop taking the square root. So remember that the function is just the square root of x. So I need to scroll to the right to get out from underneath the radical. And now I'm going to add or put plus. And I have the second square root, which is square root of 1 minus x. So I press second and then the x squared button again and type in 1 minus. Beside the alpha button, it says x, t, and theta on it. So that's the x button plus 3. Then I'm going to press enter because I have two equations that I want to graph at the same time. So my second equation is y equals negative 1/2 x plus 1. So I'm going to type in negative, and then I'm going to create the fraction button. Use this big expression for a quadratic equation. So I'm going to plug in a fraction. Press the fraction shortcut button, which is the alpha and the y equals. And I'm going to type in this long expression, so just follow with me. This is just the quadratic formula, negative 3. So negative, and then a 3, and then a plus, the square root of. So I go to second, and the x squared button, 3 squared. So 3, and I'm going to raise it. The second equation, this time we're going to type in a trig function. So there's a couple of things that we need to do. We need to change the mode of our calculator to radians, because if you see on the screen, we're given the domain of 0 is less than or equal to x is less than 2 pi, which is in radian mode. So I type mode, and then I'm going to scroll down to radian, and I'm pressing enter to change it. And now to come out of that screen, I'm just going to press second and quit. I'm going to press enter. And here the calculator tells me that my intersection point is 0.896. We're going to round that off. Y equals 0.976. Normally on trig equations, we don't need to know the y coordinate. We really are just interested in the x coordinate. So let's find minus 6x plus 1. So the way we're going to type this into the calculator, you need to understand that f of x is the same thing as y. So you just want to think about that you're going to be typing in y equals x cubed minus 6x plus 1. On a graphing calculator, you don't actually have to type the y. We're going to go to the graphing buttons, which are on the very top row. And top left is the y equals button. So we're going to type that. And now we have two rational functions that we're going to graph. Let's start with the f function. F of x equals x plus 1 divided by x minus 3. We're going to plug this into our graphing calculator just to see what it looks like. You're going to type in the y equals button, which is at the top of the screen. And now note, because a rational function is a fraction, let's use our shortcut for our fraction button, which is the green button, alpha, and then the y equals. So it's basically the green button and F1. That's going to access these shortcuts. The first shortcut that we want to use is basically the fraction button. So it says number 1 is n/d. That stands for numerator over denominator. So I'm going to pick it. And the calculator then gives the screen. So we're going to press y equals. and we're going to just type this function in. So 2, then parentheses, and then x squared. So we're going to type the x button is right beside the alpha button or the green button. And now I'm going to raise it to the second power. I can either use the exponent button, or the shortcut button for that is this x squared, which is in this first column on the left. Notice when I use the x squared, that's the shortcut. I can type in x, then plus, and then 1. And now I'm going to close my parentheses to tell the calculator I'm done with that denominator. And I've already done my zoom window, which was zoom standard. So I'm just going to press graph. Now you have the mode button, and we want to check and make sure, depending on the function, whether you're in radian or degree. The default for the calculator is radian, but occasionally your teacher may want you to be in degree mode, and that really affects what the coordinates, when you type in or trace on the graph, what the coordinates will read. So you need to check and make sure with your teacher which mode you want to be in. Let's try tangent 75 degrees. So tangent button is the tan, T-A-N. So I'm going to type in tan. Then I'm going to type in 75 degrees. So I'll type in 7, 5. I want to close the parentheses. And then to find out the answer, I press the enter button. And that ratio is 3.732. Now, the answer matrix. So let's start by plugging in the coefficient matrix, which is going to be a 2 by 2. To plug this in, we're going to press alpha F3. This is the shortcut button to plug in a matrix. We want it to be a 2 by 2, 2 rows, 2 columns. So we want to make sure that we have the 2 highlighted. It is already highlighted. It's in the divided by. And because it's a single integer, we can type -2. So the negative sign is down on the very bottom next to the enter button, and then 2. We do not have to use parentheses when it is a single integer. Later on, we will talk about using parentheses with division. Press enter, and when you divide a positive number by a negative number, your answer should always be negative. So notice your function mode, the x is what will appear. Plus 3. And now we're ready to graph. So before we graph, let's check out our zoom to make sure that our screen is correct. We want to go to zoom standard, which is just a standard 10 by 10 window. So you can scroll down, or you can type in the number 6. Once you scroll down to 6, press enter, and our equation will graph. Let's type in log base 5 of 25. So the shortcut button is with the alpha button. Press the green button and the F2, which is the window button. Green and then F2. And we're going to scroll down to where it says log base, which is number 5. Press enter to choose it. So we're just going to scroll to the right to get out from that. So I had to press the right button twice. And then -1. The negative is down at the bottom of the screen. And then a 1. We're going to scroll to the right. And then we're going to press enter. And our answer is also going to be a 2 by 2 matrices, 5, 9, 6, 7. The absolute value of a coordinate. So let's take the third choice, which is the absolute value of the coordinate, 1.2, -7.5. So to input this, we're still going to type math, scroll to the right to the number section. The first choice is absolute value. Press enter. And now we need to type in our... So first thing we want to do is to subtract 13 from both sides. We need to make one side of our equation 0 because we don't have a functional value. We don't know what y equals. Instead, we actually have an equation. So we subtract 13 and we have this equation, which I've named g of x. But as far as the calculator goes, we need to understand that g of x is the same thing as y. So we're just going to use this. I just type in over g of x and saying y equals e to the 0.7x minus 13. That is the equation that I'm going to plug into my calculator or my graphing mode. So let's go back to y equals. Zoom standard for your next graph. This is only true when you have a rational function that does cancel either a numerator or a denominator. That concludes our lesson on graphing rational functions.